Welcome to the Waymaker podcast studio. I am thrilled to have this conversation with my main man, Dometi Pongo.
Man,
Dometi, how you doing, man?
I'm better now, man, talking to you, man. It's great to be here. This is a reunion right here.
It is.
I'm sure you're about to let them know the history.
I am, Dometi, or else I'll have you tell it. But we go way back to WVON.
That's right.
When you were just getting started, you were the news director.
That's why I cut my teeth.
And now you're doing a whole lot more. So talk about what you're doing now, Dometi, because we get to see you. I keep seeing these Facebook pages where every day something else is happening with Dometi Pongo. Tell us what you're up to now.
Well, most recently, hosted the pre-show for the VMAs alongside Saweetie, Nessa, and Kevin Kinney. But I'm the overall, all-around guy at Paramount. So everything from hosting shows like True Life Crime or the Smithsonian and MTV's collaborative show, The Exhibit, which saw 7 artists compete for $100,000 in an exhibit at the Hirshhorn Museum, to doing our red carpets and hosting things like the VMAs. So, MTV, VH1, BET, Smithsonian Channel, contribute to all of those across the network.
So we love what you're doing. You're now a legend at WVON.
Is that right?
As we continue to watch what you're doing, it's just with pride. It's like watching one of our children grow up and see where you are now. But talk about what this road has been for you. One, and I'd like for you to even go back, Dometi, before you got to doing the news at WVON. Who were you before that? And then talk about what's happened to you since you left.
Ooh, I love talking about this because we live so many lives in a short amount of time. It's way before even joining the workforce, I was an MC. I was a writer. I was a poet. That was where I found most of my identity. In fact, people didn't really start saying my name correctly until I started rapping. Like when in high school, my nickname was Dometi because it was easier for people to say. And I started rapping going by Dometi The Prophecy. And so people started, Dometi they thought of it as my rap name. That's really how my mother says my name. And so that was art. The arts were my entry point. But, growing up in an immigrant household, you got to have a stable plan. And so I majored in business and I chose economics because that was the more rigorous major within that business vertical. To at least say, I'm not doing engineering, I'm not doing medicine, but at least I'm doing a respected discipline within business. And so, my parents were cool with that. So for a year after college, I worked at Target headquarters in Minneapolis, hated it, got tired of code switching, didn't feel comfortable in that space, which is one of the themes of the conference. And I went home, moved in with my mother and my father, trying to figure out what was going to be next for me. So VON at the time was supposed to be a pit stop. I'm interning at this radio station just because it's somewhat related to the arts to figure out what I'm doing next. And fast forward a couple years later, that ended up setting the foundation for the rest of my career.
And I haven't given the full story for me. I was going to do a podcast of myself sometime today to let people know, but I do the morning show on WVON now consistently. And when I used to sit in, co-host or otherwise, Dometi was the news guy.
Yeah.
We show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and kind of keep everybody informed on what was happening, which is what makes this reunion so critical and so interesting. And to see you here now, Dometi, and you've been running and doing interviews, but talk about this Waymaker Summit, what this is and what this has meant to you being here and being part of this weekend.
I think in the last few years, we've seen an uptick in summits centered on, and appropriately so, women empowerment, brunches, etc. And I felt like a healthy, positive jealousy, like, dang, I wish there were more things going on where men could pour into one another and where we could speak freely and openly in that way. And this is that. We've got the gaming room where you got 2K, you can get a haircut, you got all of that. But the most rewarding thing is been seeing brothers who are like, yo, I see your work, I appreciate you. I love what you do. Keep going. When you make media, it's kind of a one-way conversation. I come from the world of live shows, so immediately you get an applause from the audience, or you get in a stale face. You know how you're doing. You know if you're giving people what they want. When on TV, you're talking down the tube, you're talking down the barrel, and you're not getting that until you go in community and you see what your work is actually doing, why people are gravitating towards you, why your red carpet interviews are different than other ones. What is it that people are being very specific about, what about my interview style and what I dig into with these guests means to them. And so without being at the summit, I don't think I'd be having some of these organic conversations, especially in my hometown. And not only that, but the conversations themselves. We're talking about health. I did one conversation yesterday with Dr. Dave Montgomery and Courtney Hollowell about health and what we need to do to make sure we're living more healthier, well lives. How do we develop a health strategy? A lot of us got wealth strategies, but not health strategies, And then I did a conversation this morning about wealth strategy. So I'm learning as I'm hosting, which is very, very refreshing.
Which has been great because I've had a chance to talk to most of the people who've been on the stage here on the podcast. I've gotten some of the same things that you've gotten up close, just as we're doing now. So for you, though, you're here and you are of a younger generation. It's been interesting, as Lewis talked about in one of the sessions, we've got people of all levels of income, of all levels of age here at this summit. And so even for you, talk about what you take away from this gathering that's happening.
Biggest thing I've been taking away is that every area of our lives needs a clear and distinct plan. Whether it's the conversation that Nick Cannon is having about how he first developed Wildin' Out and owned that IP, to Derrick Rose talking about do you believe or do you know, to the doctors talking about this health strategy. So it's talking about, I think for so long, as men, we have been focused on, all right, let me get to the bag, let me get the money, let me get career, let me get these things. Yet, after I do my conversation with Xavier Miller and Ross Mack, you know, Xavier's daughter's here, and they're talking, and Ross and Xavier, I'm just a fly on the wall as they're sharing dad tips. He's like, yo, you know, when you fly, you know, you got to make sure, you know, you two infants can't sit in the same row. So I got my baby, my wife got the baby. It was terrible. The next time you do a flight, buy your tickets this way. Like just sharing, just men having a dad conversation. We know what the conversations is like about Black fatherhood. Right. Yet I'm seeing men at this summit, and I don't have any children yet, but now I'm taking in these notes and things like that. So I've been seeing that every single aspect of our lives deserves the same level of planning and attention to detail as it does in career and art. So I have a plan for my art, I have a plan for my wealth. I have a plan now for my health. You know, back problems running my family, so I'm going to chiropractor early, preventative measures. You know, so now thinking about what that looks like in all these different pillars that make you a well-rounded, grounded individual. And, you know, sometimes you can know things, but when you hear it from men you respect and admire in a certain context, it really sends it home. So that's been a big thing for me.
Dometi, you mentioned that you're from an immigrant family. Talk about that, where you're from, and what the focus has been of your family with you being here in the United States.
My mom and dad came to Chicago in the 70s. My dad went to University of Chicago, got a degree in theology. And he raised us, me and my two older sisters, who are like my best friends, Nunya and Afenia. But he raised us to have a vision and a specific goal for what we want to do in our lives. But what our parents didn't always understand is different wealth building strategies. You know, you work hard and you save for your retirement and you live your life after retirement. That was the goal. That was the thought. I'm the only one in my family that's not in medicine in some way, you know. My dad, after being working in higher education for a while, got disillusioned because of the type of positions that he was being put in. You know, he studied theology, studied philosophy, but he often was asked to teach African studies, just because he's an African with a PhD. Right. He's like, that's cool, but that's not what I'm here for. Yeah. He taught Chicago State for a while as well. So he ended up going back to school in his 50s and became a nurse. Wow. My mom's a nurse. My other sister's a nursing administrator. My other sister's a dentist. And I saw I saw everything that they've gone through and how they could figure it out. And when I saw my dad make a career pivot at 50, I said, if I go all in the arts and in media, I can always just go back to school and go back. That was going to be there. But if you want to be successful in an unorthodox field, you got to put all your eggs in that basket. Ain't no backup plan as far as I'm concerned. And so that's when I really was like, you know what? I'm going to exploit this opportunity in this newsroom, these guests that I didn't even, that in any other context, I wouldn't have access to the people that come through the doors at WVON. Are you kidding me? So, I would ask Perry sometimes, like, do you mind if I interview David Banner, for example, on my podcast after you get done? I don't care. So, all right. So now I'm building up my podcast and I get to practice, and I call it practicing in public. I learn not to fear looking stupid as you're learning to be better. A lot of people, I had a viral moment actually at the VMAs where, my co-host struggled to read the teleprompter. Most people don't have the benefit of your work mistakes being broadcast to the entire world. I got a chance to do that at WVON. Of course, I messed up some live hits or, did something incorrect. But I learned how to be okay with practicing in public and developing that confidence early on. And that's just a testament to my father and mother saying, this thing you're doing, this media thing better work while you're living in our house because you ain't living here forever. And eventually it did work.
So when you think about somebody, let's say the next Dometi Pongo who's coming to do the news at WVON as an intern or otherwise, what do you tell them about what the possibilities are and where they are and what it is that they may do to continue to move forward?
If I could boil it down to one concise answer, I would say take ownership of your career and your path. A lot of people are expecting someone else to develop the show and then apply to the show or to develop the idea. And one thing Melody Span Cooper would always do, you're in the newsroom and you're like, VON should be more on Instagram. VON, we should do this. We should do, everybody says what we should do. Start it. Do it. You're here. If you are working in a space and you have the idea because God put you there to help the leader execute that idea. So I would say if you're in the space, you're trying to get to the next level, whatever you're trying to do it. If I'm listening to an interview with Perry and David Banner and I'm like, I would have liked more questions about hip hop and music, then I'm gonna do it. And so that's what I use that same thing. I'll give one brief story. Even at Paramount, and this is a little in the weeds, but I think as a leader and as an administrator, you'll feel this. MTV News, and I believe it was March, April, sometime in spring, Paramount cut 25% of its workforce. Okay. Part of those casualties were layoffs that happened to my team at MTV News. I used to host a show called Need to Know. Whole MTV News department dissolved. I had a contract. I knew I was straight, but I didn't have a plan from the company about my career. My career planning is my career planning. It is not for me to wait for them to tell me what shows I'm working on next. So what did I do? I set up a meeting with the SVP and with the VP, India and Sarah, and I said, we got two objectives. You tell me what your plans are for me, and I'm gonna tell you mine. Here are the 4 things I wanna do. Lollapalooza's in Chicago, Summer Smash Lyrical Lemonade Festival is in Chicago. We go to a lot of other festivals. We haven't gone back to my hometown where I have access. I have a documentary, a docu-series idea about the relationship between MTV and hip hop. I need that greenlit, and I would also like to host the VMAs. They greenlit every single thing I asked for. And even in my contract, talking about executive producing, when I come with an idea, executive producing credit, and being able to shadow the process from end to end. So I can take that knowledge and use that for the next projects that I'm doing. But I had to go in that room and select it. So a lot of times people think that people in this industry are given opportunities, or why is that person getting that, or why is I went and told them what I wanted and waited for them to tell me no. And if they had to tell me no, why? When I've been putting in the work and it makes sense. And so that has been, that's what I would say, to more pointedly answer the question. Everything is on you, Go for it and go after it with confidence and gumption.
So what were your thoughts when they greenlit everything that you asked for? Oops, I didn't ask for enough.
Yes, that was the first thing I thought. Yeah, you know how this go. I was like, when you go into a negotiation and you ask for things and they say yes to everything, that means you ain't asked for enough.
You didn't ask for enough.
But it let me know the relationship, because really what I was asking for wasn't just to get because the stuff was low-hanging fruit, right? It was a docu-series, it was more digital activations, and I said we need to do more community activations, and I hosted the first ever VMA block party for the community outside the World Trade Center just a few weeks ago. But what it was I had been told by executives, and I had felt in my compensation and throughout my negotiations that I was appreciated at the company. But I wanted to feel it with this new team, and I wanted to see it represented in the kind of work that I was doing. So even more so than greenlighting it, I was like, are you guys willing to allow me to help grow in this space, but also help you grow? Because I know they're benefiting from me. I'm allowing them to benefit from me. And that was the big question. It wasn't just about what I wanted to do. It was like, how invested are y'all? Do y'all really know what y'all? And when they said, I was like, okay, we're thought partners together now. That was the big question I needed.
So Dometi, you've been talking to people at this conference. You've been interviewing. You've been doing all. We know the theme, being uncomfortable and how do you find growth coming from an uncomfortable situation? That's right. Talk about one for you. What's an uncomfortable situation that you found yourself in, and how did you grow from that?
The most uncomfortable situation I've had in recent years was moving to New York City on a trial basis with this new job. And I haven't told you yet either, because I haven't talked about this as often as I like. When I started in MTV News, I shot the pilot for True Life Crime in February. True Life Crime is now available on Amazon Prime and Paramount Plus. But we shot the pilot for True Life Crime, and they said, yo, we have a digital news job that opened up. And I didn't know if the pilot was going to get greenlit, so I thought that was just going to be shelved. That was in February. I was still working at WGN. December comes around, and I'm applying to multiple jobs, kept getting no's. Long story short, they say, we're going to hire you on a 30-day trial basis. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to move to New York and live there for 30 days in like this executive housing in Midtown that they put me in and see if this works. And they said, yeah, but we're going to practice the show on Friday. We're going to do one more practice on Sunday and the show go live Monday. So I'm about to do a live show for 30 days. And if I don't get the job, everyone's going to see that I only worked for MTV for 30 days and I blew it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more uncomfortable than living out of a suitcase for that 30 days and knowing that you are not only practicing in public, you are auditioning in public. And you want to make, and learning to read the prompt, learning to work with a writing team, because I'd written all my own newscasts before myself, maybe except for an AP Wire. Learning that whole process, and then navigating relationship. I had a girlfriend at the time. So now we navigating, I live out here for this time, I'm going back and forth to the city, and I barely got clothes to wear. And living out my suitcase and trying to figure it out. And lo and behold, I ended up getting the job, but now the show was going. And so they're like, okay, we're going to green light this, we're going to give you a contract, but you can't take any time off because the show was live Monday through Friday. So I had to move back from New York and Chicago over a span of a few weekends. I lost the relationship in those few weekends too. And a lot of things in my life shifted and changed. But that uncomfortable space was a space of growth, because that's the first thing that happens when you grow. Things are uncomfortable. Your clothes don't fit the way they used to. Like, all of these different things. And I turn it into, turn lemons into lemonade. I actually used that as an opportunity to say, I need a stylist, and I need a styling budget, which I should have already had, but I'm living out of my suitcase, wearing clothes from 5 years ago from H&M. You can't wash H&M clothes more than 4 times.
Don't put them in the dryer.
Don't put them in the dryer, you know what I'm saying? Take it to the dry cleaner. And I ain't had dry cleaner money that time. So I was like, I need a budget. And so now from that impetus, now the budget has grown for all of the things that I need to do. But the most uncomfortable thing was uprooting my life at a moment's notice, having 2 days to practice a show, go live with it, and then in this new environment in New York City, building relationships all through New York and feeling like I'm starting over. I'm in Chicago, where I got love and I get some recognition from my work, and my WVON family celebrates me, and meeting people in New York who feel like the day they met you was the day you became a host. I was like, oh, so my other 5 years just don't count, huh?
Didn't matter.
So, but it showed me what progression and growth looks like.
We know all overnight sensations have taken 40 years to get there.
Come on now.
It never happens right now. You just happen to see it right now.
That's right.
Dometi, talk about this part, because this is a Waymakers Summit. Mm-hmm. And when we think about Waymakers, those who have helped give you space, those who have helped to bring you along, those who have mentored, talk about who the Waymakers have been in your life.
Ooh. Dr. Earlene Patterson, who headed the SOAR program at Southern Illinois University. Dr. Howard Ramsey, who was a Black Studies professor, who, even though I was in the economics program, he would take my rhyme books and my notebooks and say, you mind if I take pictures of these? And I don't let anybody read my books, my writings, my musings. I was like, why? But he showed me that he thought my words had value. He was an undergrad. And now I go back and speak to the school, and they have a whole exhibit of all my old notebooks, all these other things. But he allowed me to see myself bigger than I saw myself. He taught me how to get out of writing in that regimented opening, body, closing format, and said, no, this is how you write in your own voice. Don't lose your you in trying to be professional. So, obviously Melody Span Cooper and people that I bump into. A lot of people think mentorship is just calls in a one-to-one relationship with somebody consistently. A large part of mentorship is when I bump into D Wade and I have 2 seconds with him, not asking for no emails, not asking for no conversation, asking for advice or tip. Ask a very specific question that only he can answer. Those mentors have come. A lot of mentorship has come in those moments. We call it mentoring in the moment.
So you've been here and you've been interviewing people, so you haven't had a chance other than now to really talk about Dometi Pongo and who you are and what you bring to this. So all these young people that you've seen, who've watched and listened to stories that have taken place here, give them some advice. Tell them something that you've learned along the way that they can hang on to.
Man, and first, thank you again for having me, because I don't get to be on the side of the mic often. So I'm like, okay, I like this. It's kind of fun. But I would tell them, I would stay on that same point about mentoring in a moment. So sometimes you might not get access to those Waymakers the way you want it. Accept and embrace those moments when you have them for that fleeting second and make it count, right? It's not always about selling yourself. It's about getting what you can get in that moment. And you'll see that person again. I've known of Louis Carr since back in WVON. And now, look, he's allowed me to host. Only other person hosting on that stage is Ian, myself, and Louis Carr himself. He's allowed me that opportunity, and I had long been trying to get in his orbit for several years because it wasn't always about what can I get from that person in terms of what's going to be strenuous for them, but what can you tell me? What can you teach me? I learned from his book, Dirty Little Secrets. You know, that's I read, and I take Larry King as my mentor, rest in peace, and I never met him because I read Wendy Walker's The Producer. So I would tell them also to read biographies of people that's why some of my sessions I end with, what's one book everybody should read? So, you know, in our communities, we don't have access to some of these folks, but we have access to books. And everything ain't on YouTube. Some things you gotta come in person to the summits. You gotta read the books. You gotta pass the people in passing. And after a minute, it's people I've seen today. Then when I see them at the next conference, I'm like, I remember your face. Okay, now let's have a longer conversation. Yeah. Gave you a little nugget last time, but let's exchange information. So I would say that, man. Get those mentoring in the moments, and also read those books from those Waymakers who inspire you. And take them on as your mentors, whether you know them or not.
Well, the people you mentioned who you've been on the stage with, you're dealing in high cotton. And Dometi, you deserve to be there. You've earned your space.
Thank you.
Proud of you, brother.
Thank you,
Thank
Rufus.
you for stopping by the podcast to talk with me.
It's an honor, brother. It's an honor. Thank you.